Hello there, Comic Clan, and welcome to Comics in the Cross, the greatest YouTubers that you've never heard of. I, of course, am one of your hosts for today, Cross, and we are here with our first indie comic book club of 2025. And we are joined by the whole crew. I've got Nitro, LG the Paladin, and Tolkien Asian all with us today. And we are going to be checking out Blacksad from Dark Horse Comics. Our first Dark Horse comic, I believe, that we've covered on the channel for Indie Comic Book Club.
Wow.
Which is amazing because Dark Horse is like one of the bigger companies. But we are getting to check out Blacksad, written by Juan Diaz Canales, illustrated by Juanjo Guarnido, and lettering from Studio Cutie.
Nice. Good job, man.
Yep, there we go. That's it. That's my only attempt to say those names.
And we're done. Thank you.
Look, that was the hard part. Now let's go.
Like, wrapping a Scottish accent around English words is hard. You throw in Spanish names that are not typical for us to have to say. Like, there are not a lot of Spanish names in Scotland. Not Spanish didn't migrate upwards. Let's put it that way.
Oh.
So it's like, so we don't have a lot of them to deal with. So, like, when you start to read it in comics and stuff, you're like, I'm going to mispronounce every single one of these, and all I can do is apologize as I do it. But we covered Blacksad, which, okay, there is becoming a running trend on this channel to the point that I'm going to have to create a playlist for dark, gritty noir stories and detective stories. Because this is like the third one we've covered.
I know.
On the Indie Comic Book Club alone, and then I reviewed one as well, like during last year, and I'm like, "This is why is this a reoccurring theme?"
If we had a nickel for every time we covered an anthropomorphic noir detective story, we would have two nickels. Which I understand is not a lot, but
cat. They're both cats.
Correct.
They're both literally cats in dark noir stories, and I'm like, "How? This is not a planned thing. This just kind of happened." But this is Blacksad. So I'm going to throw it out there. What did y'all think of Blacksad? Which, by the way, this is an anthology book. Didn't realize how big of an anthology book it was when we started this, so we're not covering the whole thing today.
Yeah, and it feels like some stories are longer than others, for sure. I think.
Oh, absolutely. That second story is massive.
Right? Okay, I was longer, right? I wasn't just imagining that.
I thought I must be nearing the end of this and still had like 30 pages left. I'm like, how? How was there 30 pages left?
I'll be straight up though, like, I'm not necessarily a quick reader, but
it's huge.
I guess I am. I guess I am a little bit of a quicker reader.
Bigger than my head.
For comics, I got through it okay. Like, I got through it today. I had a cup of coffee and Adderall, and I was like, I'm focused. I'm good to go. But like.
Go.
But yeah, it's a pretty long comic.
Yeah.
Which I'm not complaining because, you know, the more the merrier. But
yeah, absolutely.
On a deadline, yeah. Cool.
Yeah, when you've realised, hey, we're going to start this in January and we're going to record this in a couple of weeks, everyone good? And then you start reading and go, oh, no, we're not doing all of this. We're not going to make it.
Yeah, we can try
yeah.
to do
And of course, classic ADHD, I wait until today to read it. So,
yeah.
I mean, at least it's fresh. It's fresh.
I had plane rides to read this and I still didn't.
If I had started today, I would not have finished it.
Yeah. I will say this, it's definitely one that I will go back to and finish reading. I did enjoy what I'd read of it, and it's like, and I definitely want to go and finish the book. I think I enjoyed this a lot more than I expected to.
Yeah.
So,
I didn't know what to think going in, but like, I honestly... Yeah, I kind of enjoyed this story. I thought it was done really well. I'm
the type of person who I don't want to watch trailers. I'm the opposite of Thomas. I don't want to know anything about what I'm about to experience. So I could just be like pleasantly surprised. So I did not realize that this was like one of those detective, and I'm like, I feel like we've done this before.
We definitely
have. Reading it. And so, like, I honestly, that unfortunately, like, when I was reading it, kind of put like a nick in it for me because I'm like, I feel like I've just read this. So
you wanted something different.
Yeah, like, unfortunately, the story wasn't fresh. But what made up for it for me was the art.
Yes.
Is just ridiculous.
Yeah.
So I could be literally reading the phone book with this art. I mean, and I wouldn't have stopped because it was just, I mean, it's not boring, and it's just like it's so awesome to just digest what you're looking at.
Yeah, I'll be honest. Like, I'm not a huge fan of detective stories, like noir stories. I'm just like reading them and just reading comics that are about them and stuff. It's not my bag necessarily that I go for.
Mm-hmm.
I love the story. The story was awesome. I thought it was clever. It wasn't predictable, honestly. Neither one of the stories that I read were predictable. Like, I couldn't have said, "Oh, this is what's gonna happen. This is who that dude is."
Yeah.
But for me, like Tolkien Asian said, I think Juanjo has rocketed up for me to one of my favorite comic book artists.
Wow,
it's insane.
His handle. I'm gonna get a little bit nerdy here on art, but his handle on the human anatomy, because like in order to draw someone good, you have to obviously understand anatomy, right? In order to draw a human good, you have to understand anatomy well. Especially for a comic, because you're drawing them in all different angles, all different situations, points of view, all that stuff. To do that for animals is crazy.
Which is it's anthropomorphic compared to our other one, like where we talked about we done Spencer and Locke before. It isn't just the one character, like, and it's a vast array of different types of animals. It's not just like, it's all mammals, so they all look similar. It's like, no, there's birds and there's reptiles and there's mammals and there's like so much.
When it hit me, like I was reading it at the kitchen table and Joy was doing her thing and she was walking back and forth and I kept saying, "This is incredible. Did you see this?" One of the parts that stuck out to me the most was, so the main character, Blacksad, was chasing down a lead on a murder case. And he went to this bar, which was called the Iguanas or something like that, La Iguana or something. And so it was a bar for iguanas and reptiles, right? Which is cool. I think that's like a cool little thing. But he's walking up the steps, and everybody knows him, and just the expression and the energy that you're getting from the characters that are just on the steps and they're saying hi and throwing up two fingers and stuff. The amount of life that this dude gets from his drawings, the amount of expression, the amount of energy that he gets from just wordless panels. Honestly, a lot of the pages were wordless, and the amount of like just life, and I know exactly what's happening in this dude's brain right now, just based off of how he drew them. Man, it's incredible. He's so good. There's a scene. We're gonna probably go into a little bit of spoilers here, so just a heads up.
Yeah.
But there's a scene where one of the main characters of the first story gets shot by another character that's following Blacksad, that's trying to kill Blacksad, but he hits the other dude. And there's a top-down shot of Blacksad laying on a couch like this, with the dead character beside him, and the evidence and another chair, and the room is in disarray where they've fallen.
You see so much details.
It's incredible. And just that scene where the character, he's basically spilling his guts out as he's dying, and it's a lizard. He's a lizard character, so he's leaning up against the couch, and as he's talking, he's slowly falling down. And then the last panel, he picks up his head, and then he just slumps over. And man, just it's incredible, man. He's a master artist. He's incredible.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that's the one thing that I can say for this world is alive.
Yes.
It feels so alive. Like for two stories, there's 3 stories in this. So even just for that, this world feels massive, and it feels so in-depth and intricate, and like you said, Nigel, like even just like, Blacksad goes by the bar and like the guys react to him and stuff going by, and like you can see the expressions, you can see the thoughts on them, you know what's going on in their heads. Like that scene, Blacksad lies in the sofa with the dead dude there, you can tell like he's just exhausted and like just going to take a small reprieve in the midst of this chaos, and it's like, but yet somehow this is normal for his life, and like you get so much out of every scene. It is such a living, breathing world. And it's like so much more than you would expect for a simple volume. And the art is stunning. The art is like, it's like a painting. Every single image is like, it's just so beautifully put together, and
the content is like, it's really mature. Like, it's a really mature comic. So if you have sensibilities and stuff like that, it may not be for you. They don't treat the reader like a kid.
Yeah, it's not over the top grotesque. It's not over the top stuff, but there's definitely, there's little bits of nudity in the first story. Mind you, it's only with the dead body, but it's like there's violence. People get shot, they bleed, they get hurt. You know, like it's definitely a mature story. It's meant for a mature audience. It's not meant for just, you know, a kid or maybe even a teen to pick up with the stuff that's in there. But it is such an engrossing world. Like, you get sucked into it and you want to know what's going on. And it's like, and again, that happens. We'll get into a little bit of what happens, but even going into the second story, like, the world was already pretty well done in the first one, but in the second story, it all of a sudden blows up even further into this massive world with all these different relations between the different characters and the different species, and that wasn't there in the first one, and it just makes it even more alive. It's amazing. It's amazingly done.
Yeah. Agreed.
For me, so this is kind of a collaborating thing because I'm doing the review for the game. They released a next gen upgrade a few months ago, and we got a review copy of that. And so I played it, and then we're like, oh, let's save it for Indie Comic Book Club. And so that's why why we're doing this. But one thing I really like, especially with the video game in mind, is I really like, you know, you guys are talking about the world and the characters, especially. The characters were a highlight for me, which they were in the game too, because you were invested in what these characters are doing, what Blacksad is doing. The comic was a surprise for me too, because in the game, I don't know. So they try to give you the illusion of choice, I guess, because it's basically a Telltale game. Like, you know, you have all these choices. Blacksad is very much, he feels like kind of a pushover in the video game, and it's almost like because they're trying to give you like player choice or player agency, because you can try some things, you know, and you might actually like suffer consequences for like being aggressive or doing certain things, which is fine. But Blacksad is definitely more like hard boiled in the comics than they made him out to be in the game. To be fair, the game is still kind of adult. The art style is not nearly as unique as the books, which the art style is amazing. It's very kind of basic. You don't really get the personality you would get by reading the comic. Like, and then Blacksad himself, he's not afraid to throw down or do some stuff that he might not necessarily like doing. He's a way more interesting character than the game gives him credit for. What's nice too is seeing these characters that, you know, he might be meeting for the first time, because it feels like maybe this particular book was like their studying points, because there's just certain things that like connect as far as characters and certain references that have been made, and now I get to see those things, and I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Like, I might actually go back and replay it because of this. But like the art style is great too, like, because there's certain ways, like the expressions of the characters. Like, there are times when Blacksad is like more aggressive, and when he leans in and or he's doing his movement, he's very panther like. He's almost to me he's barely a cat. The dude is a panther. Like, and it's just but the way his ears are and everything, like the way they design his character in the game, he's just kind of this character, like he's just got like the cat ears all the time, and he's really good. The characters and the designs, like the way they do, like you know, like the gorilla when he goes to the boxing gym and stuff like that. The way you see all these different characters and all these different animals designed, like you guys said before, is super cool. The world is it's very interesting, especially like time period as well and stuff like that. Like, it's totally its own thing, and it really does well with that. So yeah, those are my thoughts.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and I like kind of digging into, I know we're going to kind of go into the plot of the first story and stuff like that a little bit, but even talking about some of the character choices that he made, and I'm going to talk a lot from the art perspective, so just forgive me. The writing is incredible, the story is incredible, but just some of the visual choices that he made in how he showed the characters. Like, I'm thinking about Blacksad's sidekick, basically in the second story, Weekly, who's kind of like a little fox.
Yeah.
And just the banter between them two
Yes.
throughout the whole issue.
I
issue
loved him
2
in the game too, and he didn't disappoint.
Was awesome. And honestly, there's a huge part of the main plot point of issue number 2 is kind of like racism and how you deal with it and stuff like that. And like black characters, as in black cat or black horse or black whatever, and
it's a sense of like fur, like color.
Yeah, it's just the way that they handled that just aspect in an anthropomorphic way was super smart.
Yes.
It was so funny to see it done in that
Super
style, because obviously my first thing when you think in anthropomorphic animals, you're thinking kind of racism allegory. First thing your mind jumps to is like Zootopia. When they did it, and it was like, well, it's a certain species because it's like, it's the predators or obviously the people of color, and the other animals are all like, they're the white, and they're the ones that are like reacting to it and stuff. So you think, okay, so that's how you would do it in an animal way. No, they just outright go, no, it doesn't matter what animal you are. If you've got white fur, you're one of the good ones. And it's like, if you're black, like, oh no, you're one of the bad. And it's like, and they're straight up Nazis. Like, I mean, they're straight up in like blooming Gestapo 100%. And like the red armbands with a logo on it, and like it's full blown Nazism. And it's like
100%.
Oh, I didn't think we were just going to jump into that. And then you're thinking, but then you think like the setting for it. I'm like, yeah, this is like 1930s though. This is like 1930s noir. So yeah, that makes sense. And it's like. And to see is just jumping straight into that, and it's like, but I also love it because it's also the stupid ridiculousness of racism in the first place, of treating someone different because of the color of their skin. I'm like, it's not even their skin; it's their fur. It's like you can literally have someone who's a bear and someone who's a polar bear, and the polar bear thinks themselves higher up, and it's like, but no, actually, that's the perfect allegory for how stupid the view on race is.
Even the one part in issue number 2, because obviously Blacksad has a white muzzle. He's a black cat, and he has a white muzzle. And I guess it's the equivalent of kind of like the Black Panther Party, like comes and like confronts him, and they take some black paint and they try to paint it on his face, and he goes, "If you touch me, if you put even a freckle on my face, this is not going to be fun for you." And I just, again, man,
I love it though, because it's like
super cool.
It's an interesting take on someone who is of mixed heritage and someone who is like that. It's like, because like, well, he's not white enough for the Nazis, but he's not black enough for the actual like you said, like the whatever the black party was in it. And it's like you're stuck in the middle. Like, I'm not enough for either, so you're just kind of stuck as this sort of way. And it's like, it was such a good storytelling tool for it. It was so well done, and I didn't see it coming. Like, especially after the first story, because the first story is your quintessential detective noir story.
It feels like it was definitely like a pilot, almost like a pitch.
It was to set up the world, and it was done in a very safer way, because it's telling the story of he had this love interest, she was like the movie star and all this sort of stuff. And the love affair failed, and they find her dead, and he has to find that. He's told to stay off the case, but we all know he's not going to stay off the case, because that's not what you do when you're a detective in a detective noir story. You throw yourself into it, and you get yourself into trouble and all this sort of stuff. It's like, so it was a really good introduction, but it done so much to set up everything, and it's like, it was interesting to see like that first one, like, when you get into the other stories, you really start to understand, no, this really is a pilot. This really is a, like, hey, this is just letting you know who Blacksad is and what his world's like. And it's like, you get to that second volume, and it's like, no, now we're really going to show you what we can do in this world. And it's like, okay.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah.
Because that first story, if for the most part, like, don't get me wrong, it was done well. It's like, I don't want it to come across like me saying like it was like, oh, you're just retelling the same detective noir story. No, this is probably the best detective noir story we have covered.
I agree.
That actually felt like a noir. Like, if you're a fan of detective noir stuff, this hit all the bullet points of like what you want from that sort of story.
After I had read the first issue, I went online to see what other people had said about the comic, and people were like, "This honestly feels like thumbnails, or like a thumbnails to a movie. Like, this is the storyboard to a movie." And I'm like, 100%. I would buy
Absolutely.
that this is a movie that someone made that they put into a comic.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
it's incredible. The story, it flows really good. It's smart. It's quick. You know, it doesn't drag at all. Really,
Nope,
it's really good.
You're right.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. I mean, like it was the perfect setup and the perfect origin story of like kind of introducing that world, but it done it better than any other comic I've seen. Because like we've seen some awful detective stories in this. We've seen some awful stuff, and even recently this year, I covered stuff on the channel that was coming out like as of 2024, where I literally stopped covering it because I'm like, this is awful. This is so badly written. I can't even follow the story. So to sit down and read something like this, which kind of like you, Nitro, I'm not a typical, like, I like detective mystery shows. I like watching the buddy cop stuff.
I enjoy them.
You know, I'll sit and watch them. I love a good mystery. Like, I love Psych. I loved Castle. I loved all, you know, shows that are all that. I'm a sucker for that stuff. But like to do a proper gritty detective noir, I'm not just going to sit down for no reason to watch it. It's not my...
Yeah.
See,
But
it's a prime example, and not to interrupt you.
No, on you go, on you go.
Just really quick, like when you don't notice the writing, that means the writing was done well.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like you don't want to see, like, oh, they chose this because like it's just when it seems effortless, when it seems like you almost don't even like, not that you don't notice it, but it's like the CGI in movies. We just saw the movie Fall, and there was a scene in there when I was just like, they just gave up on the budget.
Yeah.
Like, they just were like, it's totally like...
They're not going to notice.
And it looks like...
Yeah, we will.
The first layer of CG, and we forgot all the other layers.
Yeah.
Like, when you notice, like, the way something has been made, then it probably wasn't done well.
No, no. The honest truth is, you're right
Makes
on the
sense.
money. You're right on the money with that, because with this story, it's like I think especially for us, because now that we've been doing Indie Comic Book Club, we've been doing it for a good few months now. Like the four of us, kind of doing this in various forms. Your mind thinks differently when we're looking at these comics specifically for this show, because we start
100%.
analyzing them now. We start analyzing and really looking
You're
at
looking
the
for
art,
stuff.
really looking at
Yeah,
the story, really looking at, well,
Yeah.
how does this really make me feel? It's more than just a passive experience.
Mm-hmm.
So for us who are starting to learn how to be switched on to pick that stuff up, and that's for anybody that does this, any comic reviewer out there, anyone who does that, if you're switched on to look for that stuff, and the story can still make you forget that it's a story.
Yeah.
Not to overthink the story or the art or the lettering or anything, and you just enjoy. That's a big deal, because like it's very hard for us to get in a place where like I just sat down and enjoyed, and I completely agree. I did the same with Blacksad. Like I just read it. I couldn't tell you, like I wasn't analyzing the story at the time. I wasn't thinking it through. I was just reading and enjoying, and I'm like,
literally the same experience.
There's like when you're thinking about characters interacting on a page, you know, you think about it, they're interacting in a 3D environment, right? There's a lot of different ways that you can visualize that, you can portray that in a story. But I just go back to the choices that they made, the choices that Juanjo made visually to portray what was happening on the page. And I think he made, maybe not on every single panel or whatever, but I think for the most part, he made, I think, the best visual choices that he could to extract as much energy and emotion out of the image that he could. There's just one panel where there's a discussion happening in an office with one of the bad guys. They're not revealing his face because that's revealed at the end of the issue number 1. But there's a shot of the guy that just came in the door that is given some bad news. He's giving the boss some bad news. And instead of showing the boss's face and like his, discomfort on the face, there's a shot of his hands just like gripped with anger. And through his hands, you see the guy standing in the background, and it's like almost like the guy's framed in this anger. And just that one panel was like a punch in the face because it told a lot without saying a lot. There was no words on the panel from what I remember, but it said a lot without saying a lot. And that's how you know, back to what we were saying, when you don't like, I notice it obviously because I'm looking for it, but when you're not looking for something that you don't know that you need that thing, but you get that thing, it makes the story that much better.
Yeah.
It makes the story that much better when you're able to suck that much emotion out of a panel, a single panel, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's what helps make a good story. Just like even, we've had this conversation before, but even letterers, right?
Yeah.
Even, a good letterer, you're not going to notice. You're not going to notice a good letterer because they're a good letterer, and it just blends into the story. It becomes part of the overall story and narrative. Same thing, maybe not so much with the artist because that is the visual, right? But when you have good art and it's able to tell a cohesive story visually and with impact, man, it just makes the comic that much better. And I think that perfectly describes Blacksad, the first two issues, at least the ones that I read.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's it spot on. Is like it was just. I'm not trying to oversell it with this word, but it's probably the best description of it that I can think of. Is it's an experience. Like you go in and you're just in the moment with the comic, reading the story, and just get lost in it. Whereas, like, the thing that pops into my head is like when we talked about Coda at the end of last year. Like, as much as we loved the concept, as much as it was intriguing, as much as there was great elements to it, like to see what you were saying, like you could tell there was missing.
There was
pieces.
so much that took us out of it.
Yeah.
But this one, you're like, I don't get any of that. Yeah.
That I think, like, and specifically in that instance, and not to derail the conversation, the art was trying to make a statement apart from the story. You can't do that. You have to. It's a concert. It's a concerto.
Yeah.
You have to work together. The oboes can't be louder than the than the trumpets. The trumpets have to work with the oboes. They have to weave in with each other and just make a really good story. And it was just disjointed.
Yeah.
This was not the case for Blacksad.
Yeah. Comic books are a very rare art form where you have someone who is a storyteller, who is writing a script, who is doing something, having to come and work in unison with an artist to tell a cohesive story. The thing is, if you aren't in this world and don't understand how that works, you don't realize how big of a thing that actually is to ask and how hard it is and how much back and forth there is for people to make that work and to look like it's seamless and not have problems with it.
Yeah.
Like it's a lot harder to do than the normal person would kind of give credit for. But they found that perfect balance in Blacksad. They really did.
Yeah, I almost feel like I take it for granted when it's a good comic because I'm just like absorbing it so fast.
Yeah.
It's just like, but that's like, you want fluidity. You want that. It's incredible how much work and effort goes into these books and just how quickly you can just tear into it and just enjoy it.
I feel like that's the thing. Like, you can enjoy it as much as you want. Like, whatever level that you want to enjoy comics, you can. If you want to get nerdy about the art, you can find amazing artists out there and just soak it in. The same with writing. If you want to get really nerdy and you love, writing and you love a good story, there are comics out there you can find that. I don't want to say it's rare, but when you have amazing art, an amazing story, amazing lettering, and amazing pacing with the story, I mean, I guess it is rare. That doesn't happen a lot where it's like it's hitting everything. All 8 cylinders is hitting.
To hit all of those things and to hit them all to this degree is a rare thing.
Yes.
Like you can get stories that hit it and you're like, yeah, this is good, this is working, this is great, and there's some high tier comics that do that. But to fully immerse you is a rarity in comics, I think, and this really did become an immersive experience.
Yeah.
Hey there, Comic Clan. Did you know that Comics in the Cross are also on Patreon as well? For as little as just $2 a month, you can get access to all of our content from YouTube early before it drops here. That includes reviews for our comic books, tabletop gaming and video game channels, as well as the Indie Comic Book Club and our Let's Talk Comic interview show. Also, there is exclusive content available just to our Patreon subscribers. That includes watch-alongs, interviews, and a lot of behind-the-scenes information and goings-on in Comics in the Cross. If this sounds like something you'd be interested in checking out, then please go and check out the link for patreon.com/comicsinthecross. And if you do choose to support us and partner with us, then we are super grateful for that. And thank you so much for your kind and generous support. But for now, that's all from me. Let's head on back into your video. LJ, I'm curious just to get a little bit, because you kind of mentioned it as well. Like, you're obviously, you checked out the video game for Blacksad, and you're doing a whole review over it there. So we're not going to go fully in depth into it, because we want you to go check that out on our other channel. Hint, hint, go subscribe. But what did you think coming into this? Like, what was your experience of the game, and then what were you expecting coming into the comic? Because, like, I'm curious, because you were the only one that came in with that kind of a little bit of pre-knowledge of Blacksad in a different way, you know?
Yeah. So it was very much, the video game is very much classic noir story. And it definitely goes, like, you know, I feel like a good noir story goes deep into something that's like, oh, it's a bigger rabbit hole than is initially on the surface. Without spoiling it, things definitely get wild. My thing when I was going into this is I wanted to see more of the characters, which I definitely got to do, because in the game you definitely run into Weekly, and he talks about his past relationships with Weekly. And so then I got to see that in this. And then the Chief, because basically he's like, oh yeah, nah, me and the Chief. He talks about like, oh, like I ended up owing him one or something like that, right? And so it talks about their past relationship. And you see in this book, they don't exactly have like a good relationship. In the video game, it seems like they have that at that point. But it's really interesting to read this book and see where all that started and stuff like that, and how those relationships developed. And I got to get a better look at those characters than I think I definitely did in the game. And it's interesting because it's definitely like, even the game itself is published by a European developer. Like, it's definitely like, I feel like this book is probably easily more popular overseas. Is what I would gather, because like somebody had to have knowledge of this book to be like, I need to make a video game about that. You know, like, I do wish they went in the video game. I wish they really embraced the art style more, and they embraced, like, they do touch on, like, political stuff like fascism and all that. But it's very light. They definitely get into some, like, the 1930s, like, pre-war stuff, because there's a lot of suspects and interconnecting dots that were, they were, a lot of these characters were war buddies and stuff like that too. I feel like if the video game itself leaned into the art style and leaned into more of what makes the comic really good, then they would have gotten a lot closer to like a Wolf Among Us. Because Wolf Among Us, I feel like somebody probably saw that and was like, ooh, we could do a Blacksad game like that. So it's not as strong as like Wolf Among Us, because it doesn't embrace the art style, and it doesn't really necessarily, like, it's got the mature themes a little bit and stuff like that. But I feel like they played the video game a little too safe. And this is easily, like, I reckon, like, the comics, like, the video game does not do the comics justice. Like, and I'm probably going to, like, I have most of everything done for that review already, and based on my experience, like, I'm probably going to rewrite some of it, because my thoughts have changed a little bit, as far as my experience there. But I was pleasantly surprised. I wasn't, and I'm really glad, like, y'all like it too, because I know we were kind of struggling to be like, oh, how much of this are we going to read? But coming into this, like, I'm really excited y'all like it, because this was an idea we had to do something collaborative, and like, to do the crossover. So, like, I'm really stoked you guys enjoy it too, because I'm like, I liked this, and I'm like, ooh, hey, it's based on a comic, like, and this game has been out for a good few years already, and I'd always kind of play it because I was curious. And so just having this opportunity and seeing you guys get into it is like I'm like, that's cool. Like, it makes me happy. So
Absolutely, and that's something I definitely want to take advantage of a lot more going forward. Is if there is a cross-platforming of something like that, then there's no reason we don't cover it on multiple other channels and look at the different versions of it and how it stacks up.
I mean, if we ever do a Hellboy comic, there's easily a video game that came out in the last 2 years of that I could do or something. You know, like it's rare that those two worlds cross over because usually it's going to be like based on a move. You know, like just video games don't really cross over with just comics. At least off the top of my head, like there's a few like old Spawn things out there that's kind of like random, but like the two worlds rarely cross over, especially like with Marvel and DC. There's animated stuff, there's movies, there's all this, so you can't really even like. I don't count those, and let alone indie comics. Like like it's just like I don't. Yeah, I can't. I feel like I just don't count Marvel and DC because they're such multimedia.
Yeah, they're not really a comic companies anymore as much as they are just multimedia empires that just happen to have comic divisions.
But even Hellboy.
Well, even Hellboy though is like I said, they had two good movies, and then they had the failure of a movie, and then they had one that came out that people didn't realize it came out, and it's like
nobody cared about really. I think with like talking about Marvel and DC, like there are definitely good stories. Obviously, they've been around for almost 100 years. You know, give or take 10, 15, 20 years. But there are good stories, obviously, with Marvel, or they wouldn't still be around, right? And DC, the same. But getting more into like the indie scene, and you can tell like it's like you hear that band, right? You hear that band where you get that album like Linkin Park Hybrid Theory, where every song on the album is like, dude, this is incredible. Every song is a banger. They know what they're doing, right? They know what they're doing. They didn't just fall into this. They know what they're doing.
Yeah.
As opposed to like every now and then you're gonna get a banger from Marvel and DC, right? Like Thor got we talked about this.
I started reading that today. That's the reason I didn't read Blacksad on the plane.
Gore the God Butcher, right? Or Hickman's run on Avengers, New Avengers, Fantastic Four, and the new Secret Wars. Every now and then you're gonna get, holy crap, this is a good story. But with indie, I feel like that's more often the case than not, where, we've had some stinkers, right? Where we've reviewed and we're like, not a fan, right? Yeah. But most of the stuff that we've reviewed, that we've chosen to review, has been like, dude, this is incredible. This is incredible.
Yeah, we've covered a lot.
And it's cool knowing that type of like, Cross, you said it, like, where art meets writing meets lettering, where visuals, it's cool to have that available to us.
I feel like we can't go an episode without mentioning Klaus. I read Klaus over Christmas because you guys had recommended it. Yeah, this is amazing.
Oh yeah,
dude,
so good.
It's like that, and then I just picked up God Country, which you guys were.
Yes.
Hopefully we'll cover. Hopefully
God Country's on the list to cover.
I cannot wait for you to read that. That's legitimately one of my favorite indie comics ever.
That may need to be one we covered this year at some point, because we've been talking about God Country since we started doing indie comic book club. So we might need to actually just finally pull the trigger on that and cover it, because it's so good.
Have you not?
Yeah,
we haven't covered it. We haven't specifically covered it yet.
We've talked about it. We haven't specifically done a show.
We did like a top 5 of, I think it was like 2023 or something like that.
Yeah, like
and that was in it. I think that was in it for both of us, actually.
Yeah,
I was stoked we even found that book, because I went in, before we went to Second and Charles. I was like, dude, you got to throw a recommendation.
Dude, I saw it and I was like, you know what? Here you go, LJ. Take it.
It's like, you're buying that. I don't care what you say.
Yep. Exactly. I was like, you're buying this.
I'm glad we found at least 2 of the things we were looking for.
Yeah, we found Thor, Gore the God Butcher, and then God Country. So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I guess what I was saying was, it's cool that that is even a possibility for us to read and stuff like that, and it's cool having that option.
Yeah, absolutely. And and that's the thing, like, there's so many endless options out there. Like, even like that, like, even Joe's reaction, like, wait, you guys haven't covered God Country yet? No, because there's that's it though. There's so much stuff out there. It's like, because you want to cover it all. It's like you pick up stuff that grabs your attention, and it's like, but there's just so many other things out there. Like, I've got a list of I don't know how many books that I'm like, these are amazing. We need to talk about them at some point, and it's like the list is massive at this point. There's so many things on it because they've all been phenomenal. I've covered, like, I just finished reading, what was it, Black Hammer from Jeff Lemire. Like, phenomenal first volume. Absolutely brilliant story. Heard how great it was, finally got to read it brilliant. And I'm like, we'll cover it at some point.
Yeah.
Goodness knows when, but it's on the list, you know.
And like I'm looking at the comics that I've bought over the past 2 years, and maybe 10% of them are the big two. Maybe.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of runs that I didn't ever get a chance to read growing up. But I'm looking at my shelf right now, and I have Department of Truth. I have Transformers.
Yes, Department of Truth.
by
We
Daniel.
have to do it at some point. We have to.
Like,
One of my
the new
favorite
Transformers-
comics. I love it.
The new Transformers by Daniel Warren Johnson. You know, I have a lot of just stuff that I want to read that seems just like a really,
I
really
hadn't
cool
bought
story.
any Marvel stuff until this weekend. Like I'd been buying all stuff like lately.
I can't remember the last time I bought like Marvel and DC like that. I specifically went out went to pick stuff up. Like, people
I
have
know
bought
we're
stuff
kind of all
for
over the
me,
place.
but you know,
I know we're kind of all over the place right now, but specifically talking about Thor: Gore the God Butcher. The only reason I read that is this is before Thor: Love and Thunder was coming out, and I was like, I want to know a little bit more about Gore, right? The character. And I read the comic, and from the first page, LJ, and you can attest to that, the first page, I was like, this is incredible. The art of Assad Ribic drew me in like no other comic I think I'd ever read before. And the story was incredible. The pacing was good. And it used characters that I was familiar with, right? Thor and Odin and all that stuff. And, you know, it's just awesome.
Didn't it make the movie going experience all the better?
Oh, gosh, dude. I was so frustrated.
I guess to tie that back into Blacksad though, like, you know, like when you read Blacksad, you're like, okay, yeah, it's the art. Like that's what's driving.
Yeah.
You know, that's a big part of it, and they do it so well. Like when you mentioned something about the art earlier, I was thinking about like Thor, which just because that's what I read.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot, you know, like you were talking about that particular scene. There's a lot in the writing that it doesn't necessarily have to come up in lettering. You know. Like,
Yes. Because there's a lot of pages in Blacksad where there's no words, right? There's just a sequence of events that happen on the page. But it's a story that was written to portray those images, and just the way that Juanjo works with what's written to just pull everything out of the words and put it on a page visually is just it's incredible.
Yeah, as a writer, it really just makes me want to write.
Yeah.
Like,
that's the job, like, that, you know, it should be doing. Like, that's awesome.
You know, and it's so phenomenal the way the story's told. Like you said, to be able to, I'm always impressed when comics are able to do that. And I know it seems like such a stupid thing, but a comic that can properly portray the emotion of scenes, what's going on, what thought processes are happening in characters' heads, all without a speech bubble, all without narration over the top of it, or even scenes. I'm thinking of the scene like where he's going up the staircase towards like the big final bad in the book in the first story. Like there's a narration going on, but it's a completely different narration. It's him just talking to himself about the situation. It's not anything to do with what we're looking at visually, but yet you're not lost. You know exactly what's going on, what is happening, what feelings he's feeling in each thing. Like, it's so well done. Blacksad is one of those books that I would put on the list, and there's been a couple that we've done this with, where it's like, that's one of the reasons we started doing this, looking at Indie Comic Book Club and looking at indie comics that we've never read before, because it's like, that's something we need to check out. Like,
it's just like you would never know this existed.
No, right? I would never. If you hadn't played the game and mentioned there was a comic, I would never have checked this out. And it might be one of the best things we've covered on the Indie Comic Book Club. Like, it's just,
that's awesome.
It's phenomenal. It's so well done, and I'm like,
this may be a comic that I would almost recommend to certain people as well, like who are into like noir stories like that. Like the anthropomorphic stuff might be kind of a no for some people, but like the noir, like this noir story itself, like I think people would really. There's certain people that don't read a lot of comics.
If they're into the noir, this is perfect for them. And even if, like, I was thinking, like, if you've got someone who just is a fan of artwork, like, this is one. Like, I was talking to you, Nitro, literally this weekend, about a comic I was showing you that, like, I wanted to grab for you just because of the artwork that was in it. I thought, I don't know what the story is fully, but this is your this is right up your alley. Like with this artwork in it, this is something that you'd enjoy.
Yeah.
Like Blacksad is one of those things. Like if we hadn't read this for this and I'd seen that artwork, I'd be like, dude, you need to check this. You'll love this artwork. Like this is something that you'll want to look at. Like it ticks all those boxes for people, and it's like, is this going to appeal to everybody? No, of course not. There's always, Detective Noir stories don't always grab people. Some people just don't. Like you said, LJ, some people don't like the anthropomorphic thing, which is understandable. Some people just aren't fans of that.
Yeah.
But if you like well put together stories, stunning artwork, I think Blacksad ticks every box that we are looking for when it comes to a comic. And I'm definitely going to go back and finish and do the third story.
Yeah, same.
And finish it off for myself, because I'm like, it's worth it. Like the first two were so well done and they were so intricate. Like, well, the first one was a straightforward story, and I think that's why I thought we could get through the full thing, because the first story was so much shorter than the second one. And the second one, they went, okay, then we've got the green light, we're going to just drop everything in this. But it was just edge of your seat of what was going on, and like all the ins and outs of it, and like I definitely want to go back for the third, and I hope it's just as good. I hope it has a 3 story, and they're all phenomenal.
Yeah, and this is the last thing that I'll say about the art. What am I trying to say? You get paid to pay attention. You get paid to pay attention to the art. The more you look at the art and the more you look at what's happening in the panels, the more you discover, the more you uncover, the more you can like kind of enjoy what's happening. You can enjoy it, again, back to what I was saying earlier, you can enjoy it to whatever level you want. If you want to pause on a panel and just take in everything, there is something there for you. Like I just sent the panel that we were talking about earlier. I just sent it in Discord to you guys. Just looking at that one panel, you could spend 10 minutes looking at that one panel, looking at everything that's happening. The emotion that's being portrayed by both characters. Well, one of them is dead, so he's not portraying any emotion. But the energy that's being portrayed, I guess I should say, in that panel, the culmination of what's happened before and what this means for what happens afterwards. And no words. It's just so good.
Yeah, it's absolutely brilliant. Like, I was pleasantly surprised with this book. I really was. I was really surprised with it. I didn't know what to think coming into this. I wasn't.
Yeah, I'm stoked y'all like it as much as you do. Like
that particular panel, when I saw it, when I was reading it, I was like, first of all, for me, I would have so much anxiety. I'd be wanting to like get out of there so bad. But this dude is literally just chilling.
Exactly.
Chilling.
Like, so what does that mean? Like, what's going on in his brain? Like that he's just
it just
literally
really makes you think.
The dude is used to it.
Communicates so much to you about who this person is.
Exactly. He's just chilling beside a dead body, smoking a cigarette. He's a detective. Like, what does this mean? Like, he's obviously seen a dead body before. This is not his first rodeo.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
so good.
I'd be like, I want to get out of here. Like, I don't know about this. Which leads me to wonder, so Blacksad in the book, he makes quite a few decisions, and which, make the story what it is. And I just want to know from you guys if there's anything that he did that you were like, oh yeah, that was like a really crazy decision. Was there anything that like stood out to you?
I mean, I'll say
no.
Go
For it, LJ.
I'll say number one, just because I feel like I have not more context, but even like based on my experience with the video game. Because if I remember correctly, like the book ends, the first story ends with him just basically blasting, right? Trying to remember.
He kills the.
So I'm just like, oh,
yeah,
okay. Like, so that was surprising to me, because I'm like, I was still learning who Blacksad was, kind of like, even through like, I mean, I could tell like, okay, he is a bit more aggressive than the version that I know. He actually isn't afraid.
He's
to
not
like
Batman.
Yeah, he's not Batman, and he's not like, he's by no means is he like skilled, but he's not afraid to shoot somebody, or he's not afraid to get in a fish with somebody
and to blame it on someone else.
But for him to just be like, nope, I'm not doing the right thing. I'm getting my revenge. It was like,
yes.
Yeah.
Like
because
what?
because in the video game, they almost try to portray him as a down on his luck kind of detective,
Oh, okay.
Mm.
and so I'm just like, oh, like
Yeah.
the
That
Blacksad
doesn't
that
seem like
I
that in
knew.
the book.
Yeah, I'm like that. The Blacksad I knew probably would have thought about that before he went and did it. I'm just like,
Yeah.
okay, so what? Yeah, and so that's the context I like when you talk about choices. I was like, okay, that was the one.
I don't know if one particular choice stood out for me, but I liked the way that he was portrayed. He wasn't just like a singular, he was a multifaceted character, right? Like he knew when to put pressure on when he was talking to individuals, and he knew when to kind of hang back. There was moments in the comic at both issues where he was laughing, like legitimately having laughing and having a fun time. And there were moments where he was intimate, especially in the first issue, like in the flashbacks. And there were moments where he was like, something's up. I don't know what it is, but something's happening right now. Something's up. I'm like, my spidey sense is tingling, basically.
Yeah.
It's like he was a fully fledged, fully formed character.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. I think probably the thing that stands out to me the most is kind of playing off a little bit what you said, Nitro. It was just seeing the amount of pressure that he was willing to put and just not to let something go. The thing that stands out to me is in the second story, when it's like, especially when it comes to like the Nazi group, and it's like, and especially their leader, the polar bear.
Yeah.
And like just how much pressure he just keeps applying. Not just
he's like, I don't care if I'm in enemy territory.
Like he goes straight into the territory, gets right into the guy's face, but also then applies pressure to all the situations round about him, just to maneuver them gently in the direction that he wants them to go in, and just to see what he's willing to do to just kind of get it in that direction, because he knows where he needs to go to and what he needs to happen.
That's an experienced detective right there.
But just to get it to that place and just like to full on like confrontation with them. Like, I think there's a scene where like, he confronts him like right as they're coming out of the church or something, him and his wife.
Yeah.
Like the polar bear and his wife come out, and he's like, he confronts him right outside the church. And it's like, and it's fully like, like a Black Cat fully confronting this like pro-white group right outside the church, making him challenge himself and his beliefs in front of everyone around him, and just to apply pressure. Just to put the pressure on just the way he needs it.
Because that was going to expose something, and it did. It worked.
Yeah. Because I think it's at the end of that one he mentions, is it the end of that conversation, or it leads to the next conversation where he mentions like the dude sleeping with the guy's wife?
Yes.
Which starts their whole thing and applies that pressure in a totally other way, which of course throws the leader guy off. Like every little thing had its purpose. Just to get to what he needed to happen, which was to throw him off, which ends up like, minor spoilers for the situation that ends up happening, but the dude ends up in a noose later with all the stuff that's going on, and it's like because he's applied pressure little by little all the way, and it's like it was really good to see, like from the first one where we don't get to see any of the detective stuff that in depth, because it is the normal sort of noir story. That second one is like you get to see just how smart the character is, how much he's like willing to push it because he knows he can do it. He knows he can pull this off, but at the same time he's fully at risk as well.
Yeah,
like they so often they could just fully shoot him and just be done with him. No, I absolutely loved it. What about yourself then, Joy? What any sort of stuff kind of stood out to you like that?
Yeah, it was particularly him capping that dude and then putting it on the bodyguards. It's like, okay, like, so that's where his morality is. And
which that's why it surprised me so much, because
like I feel like in those noir type, and maybe it's I just feel like they try to make the main guy seem not like
hard-boiled, but still with morals. Yeah,
and so I thought personally, I thought it was awesome. I'm like, I actually not respect the decision, but I understand it.
It subverted expectations.
But then, like going past just killing the guy and then blaming it on the on that dude's bodyguards, like
Yeah.
that took it to like even
Another
more like tension and even more like okay, this is more than just murder.
It's interesting though, because it gives you a view of the world that he's living in as well, because not only does he like blame it on the bodyguards, but like the, you know, slight spoilers for the story, but the police chief fully backs him.
Yeah.
Knowing
It doesn't even question it.
Knowing that it's not true.
Yep.
Yeah.
But he just fully goes with it and is like, yeah, no, this is what happened.
That's what was cool.
And then gaslights the blooming bodyguards in their interrogation room. He fully gaslights them.
Yeah.
And those dudes totally know that they are
It's like, yeah, they're screwed. There's no way out of this.
What was so cool about that relationship? I'm like, oh, like I know how that relationship formed now and stuff like that. Like that was, it gave me more extra context.
But it's like, it gives you an idea as well of the world that they're living in and how rough it is and how hard it is. And it's like,
they're not afraid to get their hands dirty either.
Like, we have to get our hands dirty. Yeah, we have to get our hands dirty to get the job done. And it's better to have Blacksad out on the street helping us and have these guys behind bars and keep doing what we're doing. Like, okay, yeah, I get it. I get that world.
Which also, like, going back to the decisions he made, also when he, like, ripped open that woman's clothing, like, just completely. And I was like, okay. And
applying pressure.
Yeah, like, I didn't fully get, and maybe it's because I read it too fast, but I didn't understand. Like, usually with a Sherlock type story, you kind of understand how they were able to kind of get to the truth and, like, what really happened. But in that one, I was like, I think I missed it. I just don't know how he, like, got to the point where he knew that she was the one who was, you know, guilty.
You know, it's funny.
Photos. It was the photos. That's why, because he's like, no, because he had Weekly take photos of the affair, and so he saw. That's how he saw the spot on her chest.
Oh, okay. See, I missed that.
Now again, it was writing without lettering per se. You know, like
right. Okay.
Yeah, that's where he came. Yeah.
But yeah, like just the fact that he just did that, I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, he made some bold moves for sure.
Like definitely bold moves. He's just like, I'm the law. I feel like that's his attitude. Like, I'm the law, so I can do
like the law's not going to get anything done, so I'm going to go do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. No, it was a very enjoyable world to be in. It was a very enjoyable world to just get immersed in, and you just get caught up in the whole story.
It was fully the world was fully realized. Like, it felt living, it felt breathing, it felt like something that had existed for a long time, that's going to exist for a long time after you're done reading. It just felt like you were just picked up and placed in this world that had already been going, experiencing this story, and then pulled out. It was awesome.
I feel like if the creators heard that, that would be like huge.
Yeah. Because again, even like, all right, sorry to beat a dead horse, but even, you know, going back to the art, like the backgrounds, and when they're in the city, just like everything that's going on, it's hustle and bustle, stuff that you might not even pay attention to, that you can notice in the background if you do. It just gives it that much more life. Yeah, it makes it more real. Yeah.
But like, there's literally like major franchises out there, comics, movies, TV shows, everything, that have got so many parts to it, that I've got so many spin-off series and so many like sequels and prequels and everything, just trying to create world building, trying to create something more, and it's just further proof that stuff is nothing but just trying to capitalize and make money. Because here's Blacksad in literally a couple of stories has made this immersive world that you can get lost in, and I'm like, if you make it well enough and you make it of a high enough quality, like, it does its job.
Yeah.
and can create that sort of world more than in just, hey, let's add this in and let's tell what's going on over here and let's add this in and like, oh, what happened after this or what happened before that. Like, no,
Yeah.
you don't need that.
Really, really go on a rabbit hole with that for sure.
Oh yeah,
Because I mean, I could just start talking about Arcane and how Arcane does that. Like,
Dude, don't even. That's a whole nother show, man. Holy crap.
yeah. That's a whole rant in itself. The Arcane. That's
it's like when you have when you have artists who are able to create like their art, you get really great results.
Yeah.
And like the only reason we have those like movies to fall back on is because an artist picked up a pen and started creating.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, I just wish that sequels are great, prequels are great, but it's great when they're made well.
yeah.
But it's even better when we have just new, fresh, fun stories.
Yeah. I was talking to someone today, I think. I don't think it was you, Token Nation, but they were like, I wonder why so many sequels are being made instead of original stories. And I was just like, if it was you, was it you?
I mean, no, that was not me.
Okay. It actually might have been your mom. We were talking in the car. But yeah, we were talking about like why are sequels being made instead of original stories? And I was like, well, you know, if an original does well and there's an audience for it,
oh yeah, I heard you guys talking about
it's a really easy sell. Hey, there's a sequel coming out, blah blah blah. Maybe not a whole lot of thought put into it. Sometimes there is. More than likely, there's not. We need cash, basically. But you have when you have that artist or that creator that says, I have this idea and I don't know how it's going to be received, but this is like melting my insides that I need to get it out. Like I need to get this out in a specific way, in the way that I want to get it out, and however it's received, it's received. You know, those are the stories. Those are the stories that are like Blacksad, where we're like, holy crap, this is incredible. Sometimes they don't hit, right? With everybody. But those are the stories when they do hit, you're like Arcane. This is incredible.
Yes.
Everything about this is incredible. The music, the visuals, the story, everything is incredible.
Absolutely.
And that is coming to back to your point, Token Asian. That comes from a true creative who has this burning desire to get this one story out that they want to tell, and they have the ability to do it. They have the talent to do it, and they're given the okay to do it. You know.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm really passionate about this.
No, absolutely, man. Absolutely.
It's hard because do art in any form most likely does not pay a lot, and you're doing it because you have to, not because you want to, or like you really have to do it because you have to. It's like if you watch The Bear and you see the struggle of being a chef.
Yeah.
Specifically like fine dining chef.
Like losing your passion for something, you know.
Like the like success usually does not like outweigh all of the effort and all of the work that you have to even get to the point. And a lot of the times, like in the end, you know, businesses fail.
Yeah.
So it's a struggle.
That's why I'm such a huge proponent of the arts in school. Like teaching kids how to harness this creativity that they have in them that they don't know how to harness, whether that's writing or music or art, so that when they have those types of ideas, they have those stories that are burning in them, they have a start. They have that set of skills that they can use to kind of help push that story out to the world. And if they want to continue to keep developing that, they can. There are avenues for that. So.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. And I think that's one of the joys of seeing some of the indie stuff that's out there is it is passion projects. It's stories that people felt like they had to tell, they wanted to tell, that they felt like they were involved in. Like, you know, it's like you don't. Everybody like that gets into that sort of business and gets into comics and stuff. They want to get to, you know, it'd be cool to do for the big two. It'd be cool to write for and draw for Marvel and DC because one, that's probably the comics that we had that got us into it, and two, they pay the best.
Yeah.
But when you're doing something that's in the indies, it's like you're not making a massive amount. You know, I think we kind of tapped into that a little bit in one of our interviews with David Pepos, like just how many comics the dude has going.
Yeah.
And it's like
these guys too, they got picked up by Dark Horse. Like Dark Horse has published this collection. Like they probably had no idea. Like Dark Horse was a company like Dark Horse going to be like, hey, we love your work. We want to publish it to the rest of the world.
Yeah.
It probably didn't start off there. There's very few that do, and it's like
right.
But to like, these guys aren't making massive amount of money. They aren't making, you know, thousands upon thousands. It's like some of these comics, like without Dark Horse picking us up, we probably never would have known about it. You know, it's like it's just one of those things, but it's a passion project and it deserves to be seen because it is phenomenal. And it's like, it's just, it further encourages me just to keep going and just see what else is out there.
Yep.
But I think that's kind of most of the stuff we've covered without it just going round and round the circles of how awesome the book is. Did anyone else have anything they wanted to mention or cover that we didn't cover about the book?
I don't think so. I feel like I got all my thoughts out.
Yeah, I mean, I think I provided the context I wanted to provide too, like as far as the extra experience with, you know, the game and the comic and stuff like that. I think,
I agree.
Yeah, absolutely. Make sure you check it down below. I'll put the link down to our gaming channel to head over there. Go and drop it a sub. We're trying to get it to at least 100 subscribers. It's still one of the kind of smaller of the 3 channels, so we want to start boosting those numbers up. And that Blacksad video will be coming out over there in probably the next week or so. So make sure you get over there, hit subscribe so you don't miss out on that. Also as well, if you want to pick up Blacksad for yourself, check our Amazon affiliate link that is down below as well. That kicks a little bit of money to Comics in the Cross and helps support us, as well as picking this book up for yourself, and we would highly, highly recommend it. But that's it for our January Indie Comic Book Club. We will be back next month, and we actually for once know the book we're going to be looking at next month. Which is a rarity for us to be this far ahead. We're going to be looking at probably the most unique book that we have covered on Indie Comic Book Club. It's been a while since we've been challenged by something to this level. I think last thing we hit something that was real life hard hitting was when we covered Mouse during that whole controversy. And I think this is the first time we've hit something challenging like this. This book is called My Friend Dahmer. And it's written from the perspective of someone who grew up with Jeffrey Dahmer, like going to school.
It's a big one.
So we're looking to cover that for February. So happy Valentine's Day.
So romantic.
But I'm really intrigued by this book. I'm really intrigued. I don't know. I've not read any of it yet. I've not jumped into it, so like I have no idea what to expect.
I checked it out randomly on Comixology a few months ago, and I really like what
That's awesome.
I'm excited for it, and because I like it. That's one of the things I like about indie comics as well, is that you never know what you're going to get. It's always a little bit different. So make sure you hit that subscribe button, as we said earlier, so you don't miss out on stuff coming like that, as well as a lot of other amazing content even coming to the channel. But thank you so much for hanging out with us today. We have had an absolute blast with you all. Hope you all had a great start to 2025, and we will see you all again next week. And remember, it's a good week to be a geek. Take care, and we'll see you soon. Peace.
Peace.